Hello again, fellow Gears. What's up? It's Maticon bringing you another Gears 5 video. This one is on Keegan's class skill cards for Horde. Now, overall, when it comes to Keegan's skill cards, they are a little more balanced for Escape. However, he does have some awesome strengths for Horde as well. And that's what we're going to be showcasing with you today is Keegan in Horde. Now, his ultimate ability regenerates ammo for nearby allies, and since there is not venom in Horde, Keegan's ultimate will only refill basic weapons with actual bullets for both you and your teammates. For example, guns it'll refill is like the Hammer Burst, Gnasher, Overkill, Longshot, etc. However, it will not refill in Horde any explosive damage weapons nor power weapons. Now, I think Keegan with his healing build absolutely complements his ultimate as well, which we'll go over that healing build in just a moment here. His passive ability, enemies that die with your mark, reduce the cooldown of your ultimate, and this is an awesome passive skill like the card states. Targets that die with your mark regenerate your ultimate so fast that you can sometimes use it multiple times per wave, and just about every wave for sure. Now let's go on to the skill cards. Starting out with Resupply Healing Module. Resupply instantly heals you and friendlies 200% faster and reduces your damage by 60%. This is an amazing skill card, and as I've said earlier, I really like Keegan on a healing build, which includes the Resupply Amplifier and Resupply Duration skill cards as well. This 3-card healing is especially nice to have while playing Inconceivable and Master difficulty runs, because using Keegan's ultimate with his healing can totally bail you out of a bad situation, and it can even prevent your run from wiping. Alright, on to the Shredder skill card. Explosive damage to enemies cause them to bleed for 50% of damage dealt. This bleed skill card is fantastic to have on, because the more you're able to get bleed damage on enemies, the faster they die, of course. And this bleed damage works with all explosive weapons, which are the Lancer GL, Boom Shot, Drop Shot, Torque Bow, Salvo, as well as frag grenades. And people may be surprised to know that Keegan's Shredder card does about the same amount of damage as JD's Razor Hail bleed damage skill card, minus using JD's custom GL or custom Boom Shot skill cards. And I'll have some video showing this later on in this tutorial of the damage numbers of both JD and Keegan. On to the Resupply Amplifier. Resupply radius is increased by 130%. This is another great skill card of Keegan's healing trio build, but if you had to only choose 2 cards from his healing build, I'd have to take healing module, and of course I'd also choose amplifier over duration, but again I like all 3 heal cards on. Moving on to Recharge Bounty. Any player who kills your marked target reduces their ultimate cooldown by 22 seconds. This is another fantastic skill card because it's so simple to mark your targets while killing and increase all of your teammates' ultimate regeneration, especially if you're running with a JD in your game. And because of Keegan's passive ability that recharges his ultimate with every enemy that dies with his mark, it makes this card even better to use. And with this on, you're able to use your ultimate just about every wave and sometimes even twice per wave or more. On to the Resupply Duration skill card. Resupply duration increased by 50%. This is another good skill card for Keegan's healing build, because again, pairing this card up with Resupply Healing, Module, and Radius is great. However, it only increases the time duration of his ultimate by about 6 seconds to a total of 16 seconds, which doesn't sound like a lot, but in a dire situation, those extra 6 seconds from this card can possibly save your run from wiping. But you could swap this card out for Grenade Pouch or Modified Hammer Burst if you'd like to, of course. Moving on to Venom Boost. This is an escape skill card that requires Venom to work, so you cannot utilize this skill card in Horde. Moving on to Battle Hardened. 30% resistance to explosive damage. This card is okay if you're lower level and don't have another card to put on, because any damage reduction is nice to have, but once leveled up, I think there are better skill cards to run than this one. Moving right along to Resupply Speedloader. Resupply grants instant reload. This is an okay card because when you use your ultimate, it'll reload your weapon as it refills your ammo, but I feel this card is more for lower levels if you don't have any other skill cards to use. Moving on to Venom Explosive Resupply. This is an escape skill card that requires Venom to work, so you cannot utilize this card in Horde. Moving on to Custom Snub. Increase damage by 50% and active effects by 25% when firing the snub. When you're lower level or on a lower difficulty, and if you're hitting active reloads, this is actually an okay skill card, but on higher difficulties, you're obviously not going to want to use your snub pistol that much. Moving on to Eagle Eyes. Mark 6 additional targets. This card, paired up with the Recharge Bounty skill card, on paper looks really good and useful, because every target you mark that gets killed by another player in your game, it reduces that player's ultimate cooldown. But it's kind of a counterintuitive effect, I think, because yes, you're able to mark more enemies, but in order for your allies to benefit from your marked targets, they have to kill the enemies that you mark. So Keegan spends more time marking multiple enemies, and then kind of just sits back and watches your teammates kill them. And for me, that's not as much fun, because I want to play and get kills more than just watching enemies get killed by my teammates. And enemies that are marked only stay marked for about 9 seconds before you have to remark them again. This card can be fun to play with when paired up with the Situational Awareness skill card though. Moving right along to Grenade Pouch. Carry 5 more grenades in your inventory. This is another good card of Keegan's, because having 7 nades is nice, especially if you get a grenade locker and or want to plant or throw grenades from cover each wave. This does also stack with Keegan's Shredder Bleed damage card when using frag grenades. Moving right along to Huddle Up. Resupply rate increases by 15% as more people are resupplied. This card is more for lower levels, I think, and lower difficulty, because once you level up a bit, I feel a 15% refill increase is just not worth equipping it over a more beneficial card that's higher level once you rank up. Moving on to Modified Hammer Burst. Increases damage and active effects by 50% when firing the Hammer Burst. This is actually a good card to use if you really enjoy the Hammer Burst, because having that extra damage on top of hitting an active reload is quite nice. But you could swap this card out with the Resupply Duration, Grenade Pouch, or Resupply Amplifier skill cards. Moving on to Situational Awareness. Aggressive enemies are automatically marked for 10 seconds. This is an okay skill card because it will auto-mark enemies that actually shoot and damage you from gunfire, so even though it's highly convenient, once you're on a higher difficulty runs, I feel that you don't really want to get shot or go down just for this card to work. And finally, moving to Score Boost and Epic Score Boost. When it comes to these two cards in Horde, if you're not going for a high score run, they aren't going to do much for you. And now more fun begins, because we have some gameplay footage of Keegan in action for you. Now, the items Keegan can buy from the Fabricator is a barrier, as well as a forge, and then he also can purchase flame grenades as well. So, I've had a lot of people ask me if Keegan's Shredder Bleed damage card does the same amount of damage as JD's Razor Hell Bleed damage card in Horde. And the answer is yes. They both do about the same amount of damage as long as JD is not running the Custom Lancer GL or the Custom Boomshot skill cards. Now, in these clips, you'll notice there is about a 10 to 20% damage difference between JD and Keegan, which is just because wherever you hit a boss or an enemy, your damage can vary depending on where exactly you do hit them. In these clips I'm showing you, Keegan vs JD on the carrier, which is in favor of Keegan doing 5,063 more damage than JD. But on these Kestrel clips, JD does 3,169 more damage than Keegan because, again, damage varies depending on where you hit your enemy. Now, here I'm going to showcase Keegan's Healing Trio build. First, this is Keegan's ultimate with the Resupply Duration card on, but without the Resupplier Amplifier skill card, and you can see it really only covers these 2 DPS spots, which is still good. Here's how much larger Keegan's ultimate is with the Resupply Amplifier card on, and when you deploy it, it'll cover multiple DPS spots as well as a DPS spot on the stairs. Now, I'm going to show you here how well his Resupply Healing module actually heals you, as well as how you can tank well in the blue circle. This is Wave 7 on Master difficulty, and look at how fast my damage goes down and how long I can stand out here in the open while taking all this damage. As I've stated already, this is why I think Keegan's Healing 3 Trio build is amazing for sure. Definitely worth a try. Okay, so here we are on Master difficulty, and I just used Keegan's ultimate. And here you're going to see how fast it can recharge by just marking enemies. And I'm just casually marking them or marking over a teammate's mark. It's not a big sweat fest of marking everything constantly. But I'm doing this because, again, Keegan's passive is the more enemies that die with your mark, the faster you get your ultimate back. And as you can see me here using my favorite weapon, the drop shot, and if I could tell the Coalition one thing, it would be that I hope they eventually create a class that is completely built and revolved around using the drop shot. But I know I'll keep dreaming there, right? And a couple more booms should do. And one more here. Boom, just got the ultimate back. Definitely great, fun stuff for sure. I do need to point out, though, that there is one disadvantage to playing Keegan, and that is he doesn't have an extra ammo capacity skill card like JD does. So when it comes to explosive damage weapons, Keegan only gets 10 torque bows, 4 drop shots, 3 boom shots, and 3 of the Lancer GLs as well. However, JD, on the other hand, gets, with his ammo capacity skill card equipped, he gets more explosive rounds. JD gets 15 torque bows, 9 drop shots, 8 boom shots, and 8 Lancer GLs as well. But I think Keegan's lack of ammo capacity is not really that big of a deal, especially if you don't use the Lancer GL and just stick with using the other explosive weapons. And this is my weapon setup I like to use with Keegan, and because of his lack of ammo, it's not required, but it is nice to have 2 weapon lockers. Thanks, NG. Sometimes. I personally like to use drops, booms, a salvo, just in case, and a cryo to take care of any flyers if needed. In closing this Keegan class tutorial, I think he has some great strengths, and is definitely worth playing in Horde, especially if you substitute the GL for a boom and drop. But please tell us what your opinion of him in Horde is in the comments below, and as always, enjoyed everybody. Thank you.